Well, I've only gotten one turn in today, so I came up to try to do another one. And I ran across something I've been screwing up. I don't know how many turns it's been, quite a few actually. For the German losses for the surrender, I've been using a full die roll. You're supposed to use a half die roll rounded up. I think I'm gonna not do surrenders for a couple of turns. It's a new rule added only for the expansion to try to apply some sort of balance or something. But given the fact that so far it's felt like the Russian side has been doing better overall in the West. I mean, you know, one play of a game, etc. I can't really talk about balance, but it doesn't really feel like a terribly needed balancing function from my view. Does it? Yeah, it does. But the added rule feels like a needed balancing function. It feels like the extra damage that I've been taking has not been that terrible in terms of the Germans being stripped from it. But yeah, they're kind of running a little low on troops now. So we'll give them a couple of turns respite and then start rolling again maybe. Or maybe we'll forget we gave them a couple turns respite and start rolling right away. I don't know. So I can tell you one thing that really annoys me in this game, and I commented on it earlier. Hunting through all my units for the ones I want to replace. Most turns, it's pretty easy. It's especially bad for the Soviets because there it's like, oh, you get one infantry corps, or you get like 3 infantry corps, 1 tank corps, and this or that. Now the guard infantry are awesome because they're always going to be dead if you can get them. But the other units, you have to look around. It's like, do I have a damaged tank corps? If I don't, I've got a tank corps here. And I'm assuming now the tank corps are different from guard tank, you know, because guard tank are called out specifically. So now I can't take guard tank as tank. I find hunting through trying to find the units, and the same thing with the withdrawal units, especially where they're the specific units that are withdrawn. What if it was in my dead pile? I'd have to hunt through that, a huge thing. So, you know, there's a lot of kind of little pieces to this that I find kind of annoying to the reinforcement chart and the replacements that are underway. Anyway, over here, the South has stalled completely, unless this guy wants to do it. We've got 1 attack possible, which maybe we'll run this over because we're kind of cut off down here now. On the other hand, it's kind of a waste of an attack to just basically blow away that one piece. I don't think we're going to get any more attacks in that. But I think clearing it out of the way will be a good idea, and I'll be able to get my supply in better hands there. Over here, the Allies got 1 air point. Do I want to spend it on an interdiction mission when I'm not going to get any additional shifts off of it? Or do I just want to take a single shift somewhere? I think I'm going to take the single shift somewhere because, quite honestly, I haven't really felt like the Germans have been sweeping around moving much. They're kind of inching their way out of this pit, and that's pretty much where the focus of the battles is right now, other than, you know, if I'm going to make an attack down here or up here. And again, that's not going to rely on swift German reaction. So we won't place any interdictions. We'll keep that as an attack. And I don't have that. I can't figure out a use for paratroopers except as a quicker way to land them on the board. They're not devastating like they are in some games where it's just like, oh, look, negates the river line because you've got 1 unit through, you know, on the other side or whatever. So it's only really what you drop that gets the multiplier. And I got all these paratrooper points, but, you know, the big cost is actually hunting down where there's paratroopers. on the board, and then also looking up the rule to see how they get, you know, how I can make a landing from them. Do they have to start out outside an enemy zone of control or whatever? I kind of need all the troops I got on the board. I mean, I'm sure there are some that I could scrape up a couple of units if it's really a big deal to like drop a landing somewhere. Tell you where it might be useful is in grabbing something like Rotterdam. There's no defense back there at all. On the other hand, it's not that valuable to me because my troops won't be able to get supply from it. And without a headquarters and everything, I'm not going to be able to do a breakout. So I've got to be able to get a force, you know, through for that to even work. So I'll rather just pound through the way I'm going. Yeah, I'm unimaginative. You know, I could see if I had a landing force to follow it up, that would be useful. Although I think airborne units don't help you with a landing anyway. So I really don't know. I mean, you know, if the port converts completely, then I'd be able to bring units in, but I'll never get the beachhead invasion or anything like that. So I really don't know what to do with them. Like I said, unimaginative. I think there was something else I wanted to chatter about, but I don't remember what. All right, on to the toil of moving all of these things. Yeah. World War II operational stuff is really not my cup of tea. Goal is speed bump removal, getting rid of this, and this. Yeah, I got enough supply range, I can hit them both. Now I have two fronts up on the Berlin side over here. This is actually uglier than I thought. Vienna is really the only way that roads go. There's no road up here until you cross up to Krakow. Obviously, I could swing up around there if things clear up or if I devote some troops to it. But right now, there's some Hungarians sitting on the crossroads there, causing me trouble. Over here, the English make this their main goal. I can't see making that attack. And this one, there's no bridge, so I can't get double forces against there. For the Americans, things are really complicated. First of all, we're going to try to take Antwerp, and we're going to try to destroy these two units. And finally, we're doing a massive attack on this thing. This is really just, you know, all-out attrition type warfare, and just in terms of like, the odds are good enough that I probably won't take much loss, and I'll end up causing casualties, but I'm not getting a lot of ground. I'm taking these tiny little bites out of things. This will get me a port. That's a double port. The problem is I can't use this one if I'm using that one. I can only use one of the 3 North Sea ports. Well, that one is still several turns out, so maybe I'll have some advantage out of here. I am once again kind of stretching my supply lines. That'll close up a little bit if I can like flatten my line and, you know, use the trucks from only one thing. But it also, you know, if I can give up this, that frees a truck up there, and I still get the same 4 ports running, and eventually, yeah, 4 ports running, which should be fine. Although I was kind of, you know, hey, if I had given this guy attack orders, if I had an extra port, I could have slid over and maybe hit Frankfurt. But I'm not really in that big a hurry there. I've got a fair number of turns left. These guys are really just kind of staking their claim to southern Germany right now. All right, let's roll some dice. Terribly pleasant. For the Russians, yeah, bang, we got rid of this, but we got stymied here pretty hard. Brits took Stuttgart, rushed the tanks up, planning on punching some more up here. In here, the Allies got rid of the 1 unit that was alone, but here kind of fought to an exchange, here to an exchange, here to an exchange. Now this is going to drop into a siege type situation where it'll be easier to attack. But as it stands right now, most of the American units were behind the river line. A lot of these attacks were very, very low odds. This was a 1-to-1, went down to, because it's in a fort, went up to 2-to-1 because of the air power. Most of them were in that 2-to-1 region. Just not a lot of hopes of gaining. Over here I had some good odds, but everywhere else, and then way down there. But most of them were pretty crappy for the Western Allies. Don't think there's anything too exciting. On to the German turn. The Germans trying to extricate themselves from problems. Over here, like I said, I noticed, those Russians can't move forward easily. I'm actually increasing this line that looks pretty shaky, trying to get these Jaegers back. Over here, brought some more troops into Prague so that I can start, trying to, again, control the roads. This line is becoming a little bit more solid. It might seem kind of strange to have like a unit out here, but the point is, if I leave this hex empty, the Russians can then just pop into it and defeat the river line in part. Of course, if I don't leave it empty, they can attack a weaker force. But there's a huge amount of forces about ready to be transferred from the west. So we'll see. Ooh, forget about this guy. Where do I want him? I'm not quite sure. I'm willing to stay on the forest lines here if they want to come crossing the river. And that's kind of the point here, so that I had a forest line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We can get that up there. Okay. Lost unit. I threw a pretty decent unit actually down in Nuremberg. The reason being, there's a lot of points in Munich and Nuremberg. I feel like that piece makes it so that the Brits are going to have to concentrate if they want to grab those points at this point in the game. And if they don't want to grab those points, if they want to concentrate this way, hey, maybe I'll get to sit those 8 points out. I mean, it's not that long, right? Elsewhere, extricating that 1 hex, pulling back out of the Netherlands, really. I should be defending up at Arnhem. Let's get a unit there. I could have gotten there with strategic movement. Yeah, because I would like to get something over in Rotterdam. I don't think I have an easy way to get anything there. And that basically means the Rhine will be crossed in the north because I'm not defending up there. But I don't think I had anything that I could get there easily, and there are no A's up there. So once again, a decision is made by some, larger operational considerations that happened earlier, but now I'm paying the price for it. I probably shouldn't have pulled all my garrisons out of back areas and everything, because it's obvious I would forget them. This isn't an A, is it? Could I get it from here? There's no air power right now. I could maybe get it here. There was a unit back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got something here that I could throw in there. Why don't I put another unit up here, actually? And that means, why don't I start falling back with more units there? I don't know. Fiddling about, but, moving around this way, trying to seal that area off. I think that's going to start happening. So, I mean, it already started. So I've got to kind of pay attention, not just to extricating the units here, but to setting up what that final line is going to be so that it doesn't just get overrun before I defend it. I might not have done a good enough job. Anyway, that closes out January. And we're getting there. Didn't have very limited attack capacity, just one headquarters activated. I guess I'm kind of forced to keep pushing in this direction. We want to get some move on because the German line here, more and more reinforcements are coming in at Berlin. We want to make sure we can get there. Over in the west, lots of air points, so we're interdicting in both spaces. It's a nice change from last turn. Headquarters, you know, I kind of have one extra port as it stands. Things are a little close, but with Patton here, he can kind of reach everything he needs to. These guys aren't going to be able to attack, but they're not really in a good position to until the Brits break through here. I could have made both British headquarters be active. That would allow me to maybe push a little further in the southern German areas, but that's not that big a deal. Now, one thing that I'm curious about, I think the extended game goes further than the real game. Here I am, or in the original game. Let's take a look at the original scenario endpoint, because this goes out into April, you know, fall of Germany, in which case, especially the Germans in the West, are doing pretty well here. No, these guys go out to 25 as well, which seems strange to me because the whole board should be conquered by then, if I'm understanding correctly. Like, Allied victory conditions should be basically all of the spaces on the original map. So I don't know if the original game stretched out so far. I mean, this additional map doesn't belong in that first scenario, so I'm a little confused about that. Anyway, let's get some attacks underway. I don't know where our focus is, you know, we're still trying to pound our way through here, which is not going well at all. Big, slow Russian infantry units really cause problems. I want to get them on the line pretty much everywhere. Down here, of course, I've got lots of time to reposition because I don't have any attacks. But here, I'm going to hold off making my attack. I'm not set up to launch it yet. You know, I've got a couple of attacks that I'd like to make, but not yet. And while I've got an attack marker there, you know, I don't want to burn it on crappy attacks, even though I kind of need to cause damage. That attack still largely stalled. Hitting here, we didn't get a good result. Up here, at Antwerp, again, not a good result. We didn't blow them out of there. Thought we would, but these attacks are coming out as like 1-to-1s, and then with the shifts, they go up to 3-to-1 for the most part. Here, we managed to break one of the big German stacks, and then charge forward and smack it up a little bit more on the overrun from the exploit, using the air power there. The Brits didn't really gain anything either. You're killing some big German units. I guess that's of some use, but other than that, there might be a little bit of difficulty extracting Germans. So, for example, here, there we have the river to cross. So as long as this line holds, we're okay. but right in this little corner here. The problem is Patton's at about the extent of his supply line. I'm going to have to shift some trucking solutions around a little bit. And we're kind of stretched, which may mean giving up those 2 ports, and that's going to be tough. If we only have 2 available headquarters, we can't really operate. So as it stands right now, we're kind of close to the end of where we can attack. Once we clear this area out, though, we could actually shift some of this trucking upward. So like this one may not be even necessary. We may be able to get a couple more hexes next turn. We didn't need it this turn, but that's where we are. It doesn't look to me like Germany is going to fall. Berlin, you know, this is up to the whim of the Russian high command, whether or not, you know, they get the rolls that say, yeah, press forward. But over here, I do not see a way of getting over. And I think that highlights the futility for the Germans of trying to do something like the Battle of the Bulge. There's nothing in the game that really gives you any reason that you'd want to do it. One problem, I gotta pay attention here. Yep, I think I cheated a little bit there. That's okay. These guys get a little out of supply markers. I think I moved some of this a little too fast. The supply situation's changed and moved so that getting stuff from the south is kind of tricky, but it's not that big a deal. Right then, we'll be moving on to the German turn at some point. Push halfway through February. The Germans. A lot of their armor pulls out of the west to head east this turn. It'll be showing up next turn. And it's beginning to throw Russian success into question. There was also a fair amount of forces that showed up this turn in the east. So, you know, able to kind of try to, including some in Vienna, which would have been thrown, I guess, to Berlin if, I seem to remember that there's a, hey, you don't lose things if you can't bring them on. But I didn't bother looking it up because it didn't do me any good. Anyway, we're kind of abandoning this poor unit. He's got a supply line. If he limps home, that's great. If he doesn't, somebody's going to have to do some work to stop him. But he probably is just going to get kind of lost in the mountains there. These guys, there's no zone of control across the river, so the reinforcements that showed up there allowed a withdrawal of some of the units. I'm still keeping a strong point there because that's the piece, that's the linchpin that's holding, well, so is this road to a different degree, but this is the linchpin that's holding the Russians back. Until Vienna falls, they can't really push forward. And then over here, a little bit of thickening of the line. In some places, I couldn't get the units into place, you know, like here. But again, we're really trying to make it tough on the Ruskies. But here, things ain't so hot. This little attempt to extract units is going very, very slowly. This guy is a candidate for the die roll of surrenders or whatever, but I didn't impose it this turn because I'm trying to make up for the other turns. Not a purely fair solution because the Germans could have, you know, counted they would lose one no matter what, so that would be safe, but it's okay. Moving over to cover Rotterdam. Rotterdam doesn't really matter beyond the, 4 points that it and its neighborhood are worth. What matters is either Antwerp or Rotterdam, because only one of these 3 ports is useful. Of course, if I get a bad roll on Antwerp, assuming it ever falls, then, you know, I mean, it could be bad enough that it never comes in. Then Rotterdam maybe becomes more interesting. But getting supplies out of Rotterdam is going to be harder. It's just uglier terrain there. But yeah, we're pretty much having to give up the Ardennes, which sucks because that's our most defensive terrain ahead of us. But we want to slow the Allies down, not just run across the river and make things easy for them on one side of the river. And we got pretty much, and plus, extracting units is hard. The armor would be, and mechanized stuff is fairly easy to extract. I could put that, I could have put stuff here and then gotten more mobility. But I kind of like this. Wow, you're not getting through that anytime easily. Position that's in place. Yeah, these things might die. A lot of the armor, though, it's gone. It got pulled out. No armor showed up, though, from the replacement points. Right then. Well, the next couple nights are dancing, so, including tonight, apparently. Convinced myself into it. So we're gonna probably keep going at kind of a slow pace. I couldn't get much in today. I mean, I usually get 2 turns in a day. One part of it during, before work, and then the rest after work. And it's just so fatiguing when the turns get long that I find it hard to do more. And the Allied turns especially have been long. I'm not sure they're kind of mellowing out now because there's just not enough mobility. It just comes to, a big count up of factors and a few attacks. Okay, well, I guess as often is the case whenever I state something, it's a lie. Yeah, I'm back trying to push another turn in tonight. I forgot this Polish armor. Slid it up to where, it's within striking range of things. Not really taking into account what the Germans did. They didn't really affect anything. It's just, I'm always losing it. So the Russians have all but one of their headquarters active, and that means this is going to be a big push turn, I believe, because they've also gotten to ship their troops into contact with the enemy. It's kind of big, especially along the river lines. So the Germans have pushed back from them in some cases. But a hex like this, if you're not adjacent to it to begin with, it's hard for those big Russian infantry corps to cross the river with, they can't do it, and then it becomes, okay, well, which units am I going to try to punch through or whatever? So whole gaps in the line kind of work until the Russians move too close, and then they don't. Now, what's kind of nice is I've got almost all my Germans sitting in forested spaces, so it's harder to take advantage. And then here, because of the German evacuation and the territory that's being gained, Patton is beginning to outrun his supply. So he's going to have to kind of slide down here and supply just one side, which means I'm going to need the French headquarters to try to supply the other side of the forces here. So this headquarters won't be being used. That's fine. That's really the shift, but it means I don't get an extra headquarters out of this. Might be able to get a little bit more distance on some of them by squeezing some of the trucks a little further. Yeah, I needed all 4 ports again. And well, next turn we get another port online. Russians are attacking all over the place. We don't know how effective they are, but I'm going to actually be launching attacks throughout here. I'm going to use this southern headquarters because otherwise my dividing line was no good. So I'm going to be getting attacks all down this line. But, it's not just like across the line. It's at specific points. And, you can kind of see where they're happening. Although this one is a possibility. I'm probably just doing 4 stacks against this, 3 stacks against that. I'm not going to do this one, I don't think. I could get, yeah, but I got 3 stacks against that today. I'm going to try to bust through the mountains. That's probably not very pleasant. Over here, I've allocated air support to all the attacks I plan, except for Antwerp. I'm hoping to bust into Antwerp without needing one, We'll see. We don't know what the strength is. We never remember. Yeah, but that allows me to maintain one unit in case I get a breakthrough, which I might get out of here. And this is much, much less likely. Hitting both these hexes is kind of dangerous, but I feel like the pressure is really on the Allies, the Western Allies right now. Has finally fallen, however. The supply status marker fell off the map. Now, I remember, maybe misremember, but that you get an extra, like if you roll and it falls off the board, you get it that turn, but maybe this is some other game that I'm thinking of or whatever. I'm always reading rules to something else. And I'll look to see if that's in here. Over here, largely a stalemate. These guys, I think, took a stand instead of, they refused to retreat, taking an extra hit from that because, or maybe it was actually 2 hits because they had like a retreat 2, but they would have taken those hits trying to get out of there. It seems better to make the Allies pay for each hex as much as possible. Here also, the Allies did not get anything that drove the enemy away. This may have been the one with the retreat that I stood, I don't know. They probably both are, but this one may have been a more of a choice because I could have pulled out back this way. I think I took an extra Volksgrenadier for that. Monty, however, doing his good stuff again. Frankfurt falls, and he knocks this hex out, pulls up there. There's no way I'm going to cut supply, but at this point, but it's getting close. Actually, if I leave this unit here, I cut supply for this unit. So I think I'll just stay back here and not make that advance. I don't think it particularly helps me. And I'm in supply either way with my own forces. I can get rid of these markers now. Whatever they matter. And over on the Russian front, I don't think I went over this. Vienna does not fall, but we make a crossing here. Punch a little bit further into the mountains. Here, this is our biggest advance. It's enough of a break that I feel like the German line has to collapse more towards Berlin. And that's gonna, it does a couple of things. It makes it more solid, but it's also, we're running out of space here. We're running out of space real fast, which is not unreasonable given when we are. Maybe a little ahead of schedule on it. Never sure. I thought I could set things up so these guys could attack. They couldn't. I was at least able to use my extra airstrike in order to use the exploitation combat. That was really an iffy thing, you know. The attacks were basically 2-to-1s this turn, which is kind of nice. And in most cases, that shifted up to 4-to-1s. Exploited some armor across here just in order to get that threat a little bit easier. Maybe we'll get Rotterdam. Maybe that'll help. Although next turn, Boulogne-sur-Mer ends up online, which will definitely help a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I actually feel like I have enough play in my trucks now. I found a little bit more, shifting one up to here, that is actually running down this way of all things, but that I can get where I need to right now, but I don't know. Oh, I might actually be getting in trouble here. Getting close. French are getting it out of here. I don't know. Let me move this guy up. He shouldn't have been hanging back the way he did. It's not a big deal. All right, on to the German repositioning, and that's all it really is. The Germans are just constantly falling back in this. Any of the one little rule that gives them a little advantage in combat, their tactical flexibility or whatever. You know, it's still not worth attacking with them most of the time, and it certainly is not worth doing a Battle of the Bulge type offensive. It's not, yeah, you know it's not going to break the enemy. If there was some way you could break the enemy, if you had, you know, the Hitler plan in mind, whatever that was, to force a settled peace or something. That would be great. But in terms of the effectiveness militarily, it kind of blows the German army away to make a lot of attacks. Even if you're successful, you're still contributing to the attrition that you don't want to do. And at the end of February, Germans continuing their slow pullback over here. And likewise over here, lots of reinforcements coming in, all that armor and everything. And hey, maybe we can keep Berlin from falling too, as well as keeping the Allies from getting through in the West. Yeah, Vienna looks like a lost cause. I don't want to pull out of it. Should have a little out of supply marker. Actually, I might as well pull out of it in some sense, except that it's holding the road. So here's the thing. I'm out of supply if I'm here. If I move here, which I can legally do, I reestablish my supply. But how much is Vienna worth? See, the problem is Vienna is one of the major road connections. So if I give up Vienna, the Russians can get attacks in on this. Now, this is fairly defensible in the mountains like it is. So if Vienna's not worth a whole lot, it's worth 3. Let's keep my units in supply. I don't know. Let's see. If we're here, 1, 2, 3, yeah. We'll be surrounded. We won't be out of supply, but the thing is, Vienna provides a doubling effect. Out of supply halves us. Those cancel out. So the speed bump becomes the effective thing. If I was sure that I could get away, I would do so. But I'm pretty sure the Russians have enough shit down there that they can just swarm me and make it so that I've got no retreat. So I might as well sit in the most obnoxious place possible for that. Reinforcements in the west. These guys slipped out. In order to prevent the British breakthrough from being too annoying. Oh, these guys are out of supply. 1, 2, 3. I hate to do this. It's a couple of points if I get out of there. But I think it's the only way of defending this, because once that's out of supply, it becomes really questionable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just get them up there too. It's a matter of limiting the damage as much as possible. We can't hold out. Nothing's going to save us here. So it's really just a question of how much can I hold on to. Is giving these 2 points up right now, those are points I'm almost certainly going to lose by the end of the game. So give those points up, and maybe I can save points in here that maybe I wouldn't be able to save if I don't make that move. Is this reasonably defended then? I don't feel like this is as well defended, but I'm having trouble finding an additional unit. I mean, I had to scrap to get that unit. So the one thing I could move is this mech division, but I could throw that over here. That's pretty potent, and it gives an extra step. Let's just swap these guys out in the exploitation movement. Makes this pretty strong, but not as strong as it was, so that's fine. Yeah, and over here, I've already kind of talked about it, but I've pulled back, finding forest line defenses, just trying to prevent the Russians from getting Berlin too easily. There's not all that many. Well, yeah, there is. I was going to say, there's not all that many points. I thought those were 1s and 2s. No, they're big value points. So giving up Berlin would be a real pain. Alrighty. Been away for a little while. see a couple of Canadians showing up in the med. I don't know. They'll make it in time to do something, I guess. Additional U.S. forces. A new port opened up. That should. If I've got to run deep, that should work. Not even sure about this. 1, 2, 3. I wonder if I'm actually in supply here. It's an oops if I'm not. I don't think I am. I think I outran my supply, and yeah, let's leave it. Let's push that back because that's just a minor error, but it would delay any opportunity to make an attack here. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I don't have a lot of strength. It looks like there's a fair amount of Germans. You know what I haven't done? I haven't rolled the air points. Let's see, we're on the end, which gets a little friendlier than we've been at. Although we've gotten some pretty good numbers. We're getting 3 of them. I don't know where I'm going to place. Almost certainly we'll just place that there. I don't see anywhere else that's of use that covers really everything except right up here in the Netherlands. And, you know, I'm going to have like 1 attack there. So we won't use our air power there. We have limited resources here. For the Russians, boy, are they slowed. They got no new attack points. They have 1 that they had remaining from before, so they can try to bust through Vienna, but everywhere else, it's going to be pretty tired. Over here, you know, the Germans reinforced here. I don't think I can actually launch the attack, so maybe that's not even important, but I have essentially extra ports available right now. Now, that may change. I may be down to only 3 attacks very shortly if I strip a truck out of Brittany, because that's 2 of my ports running there. And I've got to be kind of careful because I am low on trucks, so I'm probably going to do that very shortly. Elsewhere, well, you know, we've taken the Ardennes, so at this point, there's not a lot in our way. The Brits are going to be able to start clearing the river. This is what I think. And, you know, how long... The Germans are basically trying to extricate themselves at minimal losses, which may seem a little weird, but, you know, the more forces they have, the more likely they're going to hold their ground that they're trying to keep. Not a very good turn for either of the Allied sides. The Russians obviously didn't have much they could do. They launched an attack here that was pretty bad, and they didn't manage to clear Vienna. It's close, you know. If I had an armored unit or something that could access, if I had left a hole, I would be able to overrun what's there. But yeah, it's going to have to wait until the next time I get points, because I got 2 headquarters down here, but I'm sending 1 around this way, which is kind of cool because back here I did manage to clear the 1 German unit that was lagging behind there. Up here, just kind of moving things forward. You can see degrading the German line and forcing them, you know, to make choices that they don't want to make. Do you want to go to Berlin, or do you want to defend Prague? Yeah. Over here, as ugly as it's been, slowly we crushed 1 hex up here and launched a couple attacks against Cologne. The first one during the regular attack phase, then an overrun attempt. Only had the air power for the first hit, but I'm willing to trade losses. You know, at this point, I really need to get some more territory than I have. Likewise, the Brits launched an attack here, and really just an attrition trade-off. An attack up here in the Netherlands with the hope that I can gain the couple of points around Rotterdam. That's like 4 points up there. hope that we can get the crossing on the northern Rhine as well, and you know, force the Germans to have to decide what they're going to defend, much as the Russians are doing. All right. And the German units pulling a little closer to the river here. Now, this stack is not in a fortified position. I had to give up the fortified line here. I could have pulled back behind the river, but then I throw into question my supply situation. I guess I could have put stronger units here. There's no road there, but there's this bridge back here that I can fall back to. And then also there was the question of, do I want to hold this far forward, or do I want to, you know, fall back to the bridge here? However, if I do that, I let the Brits kind of open that bridge up. They've already got this one partially open. Of course, we're not using that for supply just right now, so that's okay. I guess. I don't know. You know, it's a matter of, yeah, the defense is doing well enough, I think. And then over here on the Russian side, a little bit of shifting towards Berlin, and then also covering here. This is one of the things, the Russians can't go crossing the division line. Whether or not either side would have been willing to under some circumstance or another, the Americans clearly made the decision not to race across it historically. Would the Russians have followed the same depending on what's available? Probably not for this oil here or whatever. But if you're talking about the whole Leipzig area, Magdeburg, I don't know, maybe, you know, especially with the Americans not being anywhere nearby, the agreement might not be made, you know. So I find it a little disturbing that you're not able to kind of grab more victory points if you're doing particularly well. Now, I don't feel like the Russians are doing particularly well. They haven't taken Berlin yet. But let's say Berlin had fallen. Then I'm not so sure that the line would have been drawn where it was. I don't remember when the decision was made, but it's not so much a temporal decision as a positional one. I'm pretty sure the Allied forces had already crossed the Rhine and were basically racing towards Berlin, even if they were halted to allow the Russians to advance. But the real question is, if the Allies are being this delayed, do you really think Stalin's going to agree to stop? I don't. He's only got one more attack down here, southern side of Berlin area. We're hitting here, and we're also trying to pound through for Prague. On this side, the Allies are going to try, the Brits are going to try to crush this, force things right up against the river. We might be able, you know, like here, these guys are going to be not quite out of supply, but pretty close. So if there's an exploitation, they could be placed in a tricky position. We're going to try to knock this unit and over here. And it's really a matter, and yeah, we're going to try to cross the river up here. It's really a matter of, it's very hard to get effective attacks in. You really have to throw a lot of pieces in against one hex to get that going. We got Canadians making their way up. I think these guys are going to be out of supply. Additional troops came from here, sliding in. Let's see. One of the things is, especially at this point in the game, but not just, the Allies, as the game progresses a little bit, can start making lower odds attacks. So I'm making attacks here and taking big hits, but the key is I got plenty of units. Because the casualties are all in steps, there's no like defender eliminateds or anything like that kicking around on this chart. I can take a painful attritional attack in terms of I'm taking more of more damage, certainly in terms of overall strength points, but in terms of steps and everything, than the Germans are. and it's working out okay. You know, I'm gaining ground, which is the important thing, certainly at this point in the game. But even at other times, it might be worth making lower odds attacks just to get that attrition. And that's the problem with the Germans. Even though they might be able to win a fight, they don't really want to retake ground that they've lost terribly much. I mean, there might be cases where they do. And they also really don't want to lose additional pieces. Even a trade-off that's in their favor generally tends to be a bad trade because they have so many pieces to lose. And that's why Battle of the Bulge essentially is going to lose this game for the Germans, I guess. The way the victory points are aligned, you're not going to want to do it. I think there should be something to encourage it more than just the tactical superiority, little shift that gives the Germans a little advantage in combat. Instead, what there should be is maybe either a victory point bonus for just doing something that stupid, which is kind of a scripting type of thing, or maybe a Hitler's fantasy scenario where there is a possibility that a certain kind of attack done at a certain point can get you an end to hostilities in the West, not at the current line, but some kind of peace that fixes the victory points at some point, so that, especially with the 2-map scenario, with the 1-map scenario, it might just be a German victory, the best German victory you can possibly get, maybe the only way you can get anything close to a real German victory, because otherwise, if the Allies are just going to steamroller in, if they're going to demand unconditional surrender, you're going to lose. You don't have the forces. So the only way that the Germans could come out with something at all reasonable is for something like the Battle of the Bulge to happen. From a tactical standpoint, well, from a strategic standpoint, if it's your only chance of victory, you take it. And that's kind of the problem, is that without doing it, the Germans are basically consigned to, yeah, we're going to lose this war, and, whatever. Now it just becomes how quickly do we lose it? That I don't know. That doesn't sound terribly interesting to me. And that's kind of a similar situation to what Japan kind of faces, which is if you don't make all these great attacks early on, you're not going to knock the U.S. out of the war. Now, maybe the U.S. couldn't be knocked out of the war. Maybe the Western Allies couldn't possibly take this peace. But the fact that this was, part of the overall high command in both cases on the Axis side's plans, and for the Japanese from the very beginning, it kind of should be factored in somehow. I'm not quite sure how. It's a tough problem to look at. When you're playing the big global games, yeah, you can kind of pass it off and say, it's possible that the war could be won by the Axis on one side or the other. But here, the question of how long can you hold out, that's not really something that's necessarily to anybody's advantage on the German side. Their side is to try to get a negotiated peace of some sort, even if it's one that neuters Germany in the long run. It might be better than the divided Germany and everything that actually happened. This is another turn where Fortress Europa's cracks are really beginning to widen. First of all, Russian units made it into, using the exploitation, part of Berlin, actually. And that's kind of making this area, it's still in supply because of this unit. Remember, the 180 rule doesn't apply in the East ever, but anymore anywhere. Also, let's see, Russians breaking their way down here towards Prague, which we saw already in those when I was discussing the attacks. This was used up. And over in the west, Monty kind of got halted here, but Patton was able to push through, and he's up here, Bradley probably, made the crossing here And this is some of Patton's troops slinging out here, running way out of supply. I've got a bunch of emergency attack markers. If I need them, I can use them. But right now, I'm basically pocketing key forces here. Now, these guys are still in supply, but this little pocket's not. These guys aren't. So they're going to have trouble, right? I've got a couple of emergency supply German units to maybe make a counterattack and get out of there safely or something like that. I can throw it on them to give them a little bit more movement. Right now, they're in supply. They wouldn't be for attack, though, so that could be a problem. And we'll head over to the German side of the turn, I guess. We're not going to finish this up on this video, I don't think. We're close. I mean, we're getting real close to the end, but still. All right, German counterattacks. Actually, one up here drove some Russians, you know, with the Allies seeing the end of the game soon. They've been taking some chances, pushing units a little further than expected. So, yeah, we were able to damage some of the Russian armor up there, and that's kind of a big deal. And likewise over here, we chased the Americans back here, Patton's forces that overextended, and then also made this crossing. Now, the other units that were present, we took as our losses for surrenders. So we're actually all behind the Rhine now, for whatever that's worth, except for this poor guy. But yeah, he's doing something of value, actually, which is the Allies are going to have to take that out and then move to grab these victory point hexes in order to get everything they want. And likewise, these hexes. So there's places where points have to be grabbed that as we come, you know, we're on the last 2 turns of the game. As we come to that, it's becoming really a point grabbing exercise as well as trying to optimize our actual actions. Not an optimal defensive positioning, but we felt like we wanted to defend all the city hexes over in the Dusseldorf-Essen region. And then here, these were leftovers from the attack up here, which was also successful. The Germans are good with their attacks. They had to use one emergency attack marker, but that's fine. You know, they're just trying to grab the last things. I covered Hanover because it's worth a fair amount of points and is the gateway to the Magdeburg values and Halle and all that. You know, it's going to be tough for the Germans to hold everything, but by putting some speed bumps in the way, they may make it so that the Allies can't just run in and grab huge swaths of points. Now, one thing I can tell you that's kind of not necessarily surprising, given Dean Essig's view on how kind of games should be played, but it's very hard to assess, hey, do I have enough points, especially in this duel game. In the base game, yeah, you could hunt through, see how many more points you need to get a minimal victory or whatever, and try to aim for that. I don't feel like that's even... It's significantly more difficult here because not only do you have to count your own points that you have to count the points that the Russians have as well and compare the two. So, and of course you don't know how well they're going to do on their last turn and whatever. But what it means is it's a higher burden to kind of figure out, can I win? What do I need to do to win? That kind of analysis at the end of a game. Now, I hate that kind of analysis normally. This one's making it difficult enough that I'm going to say screw it, you know, and just be surprised by the ending condition. That sometimes is really disappointing to me when I'm playing a game opposed especially. But even solo, I kind of like to be able to make that last turn analysis, but it's always kind of irritating to do. And it leads to gamey type solutions, grabbing things, although I don't know how much that really applies here. When you got Germany falling, grabbing the important thing seems like an important thing to do. However, judging how many of the important things you have to take in comparison to what the Russians already have and all that, that does start to seem a little gamey. And, you know, I'm fine passing on it. I think that some players would probably be more disturbed by this. Of course, it is physically possible to do it. And people who are really disturbed by it will do it. And that might be really, really annoying. As your opponent, unless you're both of kind of the same mind, as your opponent is counting all his points and trying to optimize it on these last couple turns. I'm going to send this one up because it's pretty obvious I'm not going to get this done within an hour total video. I got 2 more turns and pretty much no time, so not that there's any limitation on an hour, but I think they make for good bite-sized chunks. So that is the end of March, it appears. Got 1 more month to go, 2 more turns.